The morning mist clung to the river like breath against glass, swallowing sound and form alike. Wraith's ferry woke to a silence so dense it felt deliberate. Then came the shout, a ferryman's cry, sharp and cracking through the fog. The current had delivered something back to them, pale, jointed, tangled in the reeds. Bones. Elias Brandt stood over them, boots sinking in the mud, the cold seeping through his soles. He thought at first they were the remnants of a buried traveler, another forgotten soul claimed by the Missouri's deceit. But when he brushed the silt away, he saw the carvings, neat rows of symbols incised along the femur, shapes that seemed to move when the river light shifted. The sheriff's men murmured prayers, but Elias only stared, caught between disbelief and recognition, as though the bones whispered a geometry he had dreamt before. The ferry ropes groaned. The river watched. By noon, the fog had thinned and word had spread through every timber shack and saloon in Wraith's Ferry. Sheriff Pike ordered the bones taken to the old storehouse, a place once used to dry grain, now scented of dust and damp hemp. Elias remained outside, staring at the waterline where they'd been found. The markings haunted him. He tried to recall the shape of them. Not letters, not pictographs, but something cyclical, recursive, as if they carried motion within their form. Lydia's voice broke through his thoughts, quiet but strained. She asked if he recognized any of it. He shook his head, though deep down he felt a pull. An echo in his memory, older than his own life. The ferry ropes moaned again. The river did not forget. Mara Keen arrived that evening by horseback, her coat travel-worn, boots caked in red clay from upriver crossings. She'd heard of the Bones days before the town did, through letters and whispers traded between universities and missionaries. As she dismounted, she caught the river's scent, metallic, thick with decay. She was led to the storehouse, where she found the remains laid out on a burlap tarp. When her fingers traced the carvings, she exhaled sharply. The symmetry was intentional. Each symbol mirrored another in reverse, forming patterns that obeyed a logic not unlike language, but with purpose beyond speech. She looked up at Elias, and for the first time, he saw curiosity edged with fear. Outside, Sheriff Pike's voice carried through the cold night. He warned the townsfolk to keep away from the river after dark. Some claimed to have seen lights beneath the surface, like lanterns drifting upside down. Elias and Mara stood together on the threshold, the damp air thick with scent of silt and tobacco. He asked if she could read them. She replied that some languages spoke not to the ear, but to the mind. And this one, she said, spoke in patterns of forgetting. For a long while, neither of them moved, and the river, restless, whispered over its stones. When the town slept, the river rose a few inches, flooding the ferry steps. Lydia woke to the creak of the ropes and the soft lap of current against the pilings. The moonlight revealed faint shapes on the surface, markings that looked like reflections of the same symbols from the bones. She whispered a prayer she hadn't spoken since childhood and watched them fade. In the distance, the crow's call broke the night, answered by another echo from the opposite shore. Not bird, not man. The river was remembering something, and by dawn, it would bring more than bones. The dawn after the discovery came cold and colorless. Mist drifted low across the water as Elias and Mara trudged along the riverbank, their boots sinking into the frost-soft mud. Mara carried her journal under her arm, its pages filled with hurried sketches of the glyphs. She believed they were not writing but sequence, an order of motion, like instructions meant to guide the current itself. Elias said little, though each step brought him closer to where his brother had vanished 5 years before. The river made the same sound it had that night, soft, deliberate, whispering against the reeds as if remembering him. When Mara pressed her palm against a carved stone jutting from the silt, she flinched. The pattern hummed faintly beneath her skin. Inside the abandoned chapel that served as Mara's temporary study, the air smelled of candle wax and mildew. She arranged sketches across the pews. dozens of reproductions of the glyphs, each inked carefully with trembling precision. They formed no alphabet, no syntax, but seemed to react when she aligned them by their curvature. Elias leaned against the doorframe, watching her with quiet unease. She explained that language was not only spoken. Sometimes it was shaped, sung, or even carried by water. Elias asked her if she truly believed the river could remember words. "Not words," she answered, "but commands." By afternoon, they rode upriver, following Pike's earlier reports of strange stones near the bend where the current deepened. The wind had shifted south, carrying the scent of rain and iron. They found them, a series of black pillars rising from the shallows, too symmetrical to be natural. Some leaned, eroded by time, while others stood sharp and unbroken. Mara dismounted, notebook in hand, eyes wide with reverence. She noted that the glyphs here were larger, deeper, carved to withstand centuries of flow. Elias watched her fingertips trace the symbols and thought of burial markers, of boundaries meant not to honor the dead but to contain them. That evening, back in town, Sheriff Pike called a meeting inside the tavern. The crowd was uneasy. Farmers, ferrymen, Lydia among them, faces drawn tight. Pike announced that no one was to go near the pillars again, claiming they were remnants of a native shrine best left untouched. Mara stood from her chair, calm but resolute, saying the carvings predated any recorded tribe. The silence that followed was heavy. Someone muttered about curses, another about missing livestock. Elias caught Lydia's gaze across the room. Not anger this time, but fear. The kind that came when truth pressed too close. Near midnight, Mara returned alone to the river's edge. She carried a lantern in her notes, drawn by a sound she could not name. A low pulse beneath the current. The water glowed faintly where it met the stones, pale blue and fluid like breath. As she leaned closer, the light rippled, casting glyphs across her face. She whispered the patterns softly, syllables she didn't understand falling from her lips. The river stirred. Behind her, unseen in the fog, something rose and sank again, breaking the surface just long enough to disturb the reflection. 3 nights after the pillars were found, Wraith's ferry ceased to sleep. Dogs barked through the fog, horses refused to drink, and the river began to glow faintly at the bend where the current deepened. Elias and Mara returned there under the sheriff's protest, lanterns in hand, breath clouding the damp air. The water churned without wind, forming spirals that mirrored the glyphs she'd sketched. "It's trying to speak," Mara whispered. Elias stared down, seeing shapes twist beneath the surface, faces perhaps, or the illusion of them. He reached toward the water, and it recoiled, as if the current itself remembered him. From the shadows upriver came a sound like splitting wood, and then silence. By dawn, Sheriff Pike rode to the site, his horse trembling as it approached the bend. He dismounted and examined the ground. No footprints, no sign of Elias or Mara, only the remains of their lanterns, glass shattered and blackened. The river looked calm, now deceptive in its innocence. Pike had seen his share of drownings, but this felt different. The air carried a metallic tang, like old blood. He drew his revolver, though there was no one to shoot, muttering a prayer from memory alone. Somewhere beneath the water, something shifted. A pulse that matched his heartbeat. He backed away. Mara and Elias had not drowned. They had fled upriver, soaked and breathless, hiding in the ruins of the old trading post. A skeleton of timbers and stone swallowed by vines. There, under the dripping roof, Mara spread out her soaked sketches. The glyphs had changed. The lines she once drew straight now curved differently, like the river itself had corrected her. Elias said it was madness, but she only smiled faintly, tracing one with her finger. The mark pulsed warm beneath her touch, as if inked in blood. "They're not symbols," she murmured. "They're instructions." Back in town, Lydia tended to her ferry ropes, though her hands trembled. Each morning, she found the boat shifted against the current, its moorings stretched as if something below had tugged it loose. That afternoon, she saw children playing near the waterline, tossing stones, and when one stone landed, the ripples formed shapes too deliberate to be chance. She yelled for them to leave, her voice cracking in fear. That night, she dreamed of her husband standing waist deep in the river, whispering to someone beneath the surface. When she awoke, her pillow was damp with river water. That night, thunder rolled from the north, though no rain fell. The river's glow returned, stronger now, turning the town's windows blue. Elias and Mara emerged from the trees and saw Wraith's ferry, illuminated like a phantom settlement. The water pulsed, synchronized with the flickering lamps in every cabin. Sheriff Pike stood on the dock, pistol drawn, shouting at the current as if it might answer. The glow reached its height, and then the river went dark, all at once. In that breath of silence, the ferry ropes snapped. The boat drifted away on its own, empty, vanishing into blackness. By morning, Wraith's ferry was half deserted. Wagons rolled out through the mist, carrying families too frightened to stay. Those who remained whispered of voices in the fog, calling them by name. In the silence that followed, Mara and Elias returned to the bend where the glow had first begun. The pillars stood half-submerged, slick with dew. Between them, the water was calm, deceptively calm, and the carvings shimmered faintly beneath the surface. Mara leaned close, her reflection merging with the symbols. Elias watched her expression shift, entranced, until she whispered something low and rhythmic, a phrase not of any human tongue. The river stirred. A shape rose below the water, not quite human, not quite shadow. Inside the abandoned chapel, Mara translated what she could. The glyphs spoke not of worship, but of containment. They told of a people who once made a pact with the river, to hold back what slept within it. Their offerings were blood and bone, etched with the marks of remembrance, buried in the current to keep its hunger bound. Elias stood beside her, staring at the altar, now cracked and leaking moisture from within. He asked what the river wanted. Mara hesitated before answering. To remember what it was, before it forgot us. Sheriff Pike arrived at the chapel that night, rain dripping from his coat. He accused them of stirring fear, of summoning whatever evil the town now faced. But when Mara showed him the translation, his bluster faltered. The glyphs described a ritual meant to bind the remembering waters. Pike laughed nervously, then froze as a rumble echoed beneath the floorboards. Water seeped through the cracks, filling the seams between stones. He stepped back, eyes wide. "You brought it here," he whispered, but Mara shook her head. "It's always been here." The next day brought thunder that never reached the ground. The sky remained dry, but lightning flashed somewhere above the mist. Lydia crossed the empty streets, searching for Elias, her boots echoing against the cobblestones. She reached the chapel and stopped. The door stood ajar, the air inside humid and thick. She saw their lanterns flickering, heard murmured voices, and then silence. A gust of wind blew through, extinguishing the lights. She called his name once, softly. The only reply came from the river outside, whispering through the open windows, repeating her voice back to her, word for word. That night, the three of them gathered at the riverbank once more. The water was rising again, faster than before. Mara held the black stone fragment she'd recovered from the pillars, its surface now pulsing with faint blue veins. She said, "The river remembered every voice, every death, every prayer ever whispered to it. And now it wanted them all back." Elias stared into the current where bones gleamed faintly among the reeds. Pike raised his pistol toward the water, shouting curses. The river answered. The surface shattered outward, a column of water rising like a spine. The sound that followed was neither thunder nor wind, but the voice of something ancient remembering its name. The storm came without rain. Clouds hung low and black, trembling with distant light, and the river began to boil. Elias and Mara stood on the bank as wind tore through the trees, flinging branches across the water. The current reversed direction, drawing debris toward the bend where the pillars lay. The black stone in Mara's hand throbbed like a heartbeat. She whispered fragments of the glyphs, trying to calm the turbulence, but the words slipped from her tongue like oil. Elias shouted above the wind, demanding she stop. "It's not speaking to you, it's using you." But her eyes glowed faintly in the blue light, and the river answered in kind. In the distance, Sheriff Pike watched from the ferry dock, the water swirling beneath him in spirals that defied gravity. He shouted for them to get clear, but his voice was lost in the roar. The planks beneath his boots began to tremble, wet nails snapping free. When the current shifted, the ferry's ropes tightened, dragging the dock sideways into the river. Pike drew his revolver, not at the current but at the rope, and fired. The recoil echoed like thunder. The line snapped, and the ferry broke free, drifting toward the center of the churning water. Pike stepped back, breathing hard. The river seemed to sigh. The ferry drifted into the heart of the storm. Elias ran along the bank, shouting Mara's name as lightning flared above the river. In that flash, he saw the pillars clearly, their carvings glowing bright, water pouring upward from their tops as if gravity itself had been inverted. Mara stood at the center, black stone raised, chanting words he couldn't understand. The current swallowed sound, but he felt the rhythm through his bones. Then the light burst outward, blinding white and blue, and the river fell silent again, except for the faint ringing in his ears and the echo of her voice fading into the depths. When the light subsided, the river's course had changed. What once flowed east now curved north, carving through the forest as if reclaiming its original path. The town lay half-submerged. Cabins tilted, chimneys spewing steam. Lydia stood on what remained of the ferry dock, rain plastering her hair to her face. She saw Elias on the far shore, soaked, bleeding, calling out. Behind him, the earth gave way, revealing a dark mouth beneath the waterline. A tunnel or a chamber, impossible in scale. From within came a low, hollow breath, older than wind, older than the town itself. Lydia screamed his name, but the sound was drowned by the roar of water rushing inward. By nightfall, Wraith's ferry was gone. Only the church steeple and a handful of roofs broke the surface of the swollen current. Mara was nowhere to be found. Sheriff Pike stood on a ridge above the floodplain, soaked to the bone, staring down at the ruin. The river no longer shimmered, it breathed. The air pulsed with faint blue light beneath the surface, like veins under skin. Elias reached the ridge beside him, face pale, eyes hollow. "It's not done," he said quietly. Pike turned to answer, but before he could speak, the ground beneath them trembled, not from thunder, but from something awakening below. The storm had broken, but the air remained heavy, the silence after a scream. Elias and Sheriff Pike descended toward the gaping chasm where the river had swallowed the land. Steam rose from the water like breath from some unseen thing. The mud was warm beneath their boots. Pike muttered that the ground shouldn't move like that, shouldn't pulse. Elias said nothing. He carried a lantern, its flame quivering as they reached the entrance, a black opening carved smooth as glass. The walls glimmered faintly with wet glyphs, alive with motion, even in stillness. The light flickered, and Pike's hand trembled. "You sure this is worth dying for?" he asked. Elias stared into the darkness. "I think we already did." They moved deeper into the earth, the tunnels sloping downward until the sound of the river above became a low, constant heartbeat. The walls were carved in repeating patterns, each symbol interlocking with the next. No beginning, no end. Pike trailed behind, gun drawn, though he knew it would do no good. Elias paused before a chamber where the floor was covered in shallow water, perfectly still. In its reflection, the glyphs on the ceiling formed an unbroken spiral. "Mara!" Voice echoed faintly through the air. distant and layered, speaking the same foreign words she had whispered by the pillars. Elias lifted his lantern, and there she was, or her shape, standing beyond the spiral, eyes glowing blue like the river's core. Mara spoke without sound, her lips forming the same phrases Elias had heard that night by the pillars. Her hand reached toward him, but where her skin met the light, her body fractured like glass. "You shouldn't be here," she mouthed. Behind her, the glyphs pulsed faster, illuminating the chamber with heart-like rhythm. Elias stepped forward despite Pike's warning. The water trembled beneath his boots. "What is this place?" he demanded. Mara's reflection leaned close to his, and the voice that answered was not hers. "This is where memory sinks." The light surged, and both men were thrown backward into the current that suddenly poured from the walls. Elias awoke on a ledge of wet stone, the air thick with mist and the scent of iron. The chamber had collapsed, but a narrow opening above revealed the river, glowing faintly in the distance. Pike lay nearby, breathing shallowly, his revolver lost. "She's gone," he muttered, staring blankly upward. Elias followed his gaze and saw the shapes moving in the glow above. Not fish, not debris, but faces, dozens of them, drifting through the current, eyes open and unblinking. The river was remembering its dead. Each face bore the same faint carvings along the skin, the glyphs, marking them as part of the pact. Elias whispered his brother's name, and one of the faces turned toward him. Hours later, or perhaps only moments, the water began to recede. The walls of the cavern pulsed one final time before going dark. Pike stirred, coughing, but Elias remained still, watching as faint streaks of blue light traced the floor toward the river's source. He rose and followed them, emerging onto the bank where dawn was breaking. The river flowed quietly now, its surface smooth as glass. In his hand, he held what remained of the black stone, now dull and lifeless. Yet, as sunlight broke over the horizon, the faint sound of Mara's voice drifted through the reeds, not calling for help, but reciting. Elias closed his eyes, hearing each word echo through his bones. The river remembered. And now, so did he. The floodwaters receded slowly, leaving behind a new map of the land. Where Wraith's Ferry once stood, there remained only silence. No buildings, no roads, only the curling black thread of the river and the faint memory of smoke. Elias wandered through the marshy remains of Main Street, the mud swallowing his boots. Every step released the scent of decay, mixed with something sweet, like wet lilac. He found the remnants of the chapel bell, half buried in silt, its bronze surface etched now with symbols he did not remember carving. He whispered Mara's name, but the sound vanished before it reached the air. Above, the sky burned orange with dawn, and the river whispered like wind through hollow bones. Across the river, Lydia waited at the high ridge, the ferry rope still looped around her wrist like a relic. The flood had taken everything: her home, her livelihood, even the sound of her own prayers. When she saw Elias emerge from the mist, she did not wave. They stared at each other across the new current that now split the valley in two. He looked smaller than she remembered, older somehow, though only days had passed. In that moment she understood. The man who had come back from the river was not the same one who'd left her. She let the rope fall into the water, and the current carried it away, winding through the reeds like a serpent seeking rest. Days passed. Sheriff Pike, half mad from exhaustion, built fires each night along the bank to keep the darkness at bay. He swore he heard voices from the water, familiar ones calling him by name, thanking him. On the fifth night, he followed the sound, wading waist-deep into the current with his lantern high. Elias found the lantern the next morning caught between two reeds, still burning, the sheriff's hat floating beside it. No body was ever recovered. Morris notes washed up beside the lantern were illegible. The ink bled into flowing lines that resembled the glyphs themselves. The river had taken back its land. Elias built a small raft from driftwood and the remnants of the ferry's hull. He said nothing to Lydia, leaving before dawn. The current carried him slowly downriver, past the drowned forests and broken fences, past the steeple's tip that marked what had been the heart of town. As he drifted, he hummed a tune. The same his brother once sang when they ferried goods across the water long ago. The river moved in rhythm with the melody, smooth and even. For the first time, he felt no resistance from the current. It carried him not as a trespasser, but as something remembered. By evening, the raft reached the bend where the pillars once stood. Only one remained visible above the water, its carving smooth and clean, the symbols erased by the flood. Elias touched its surface and felt the faint warmth of life pulsing beneath the stone. He spoke softly, not words of prayer, but gratitude. The current shifted, carrying him toward the open expanse beyond the valley. Behind him, Wraith's Ferry sank into legend, another settlement lost to flood and time. The river closed its surface like a wound healed over. As twilight deepened, only ripples marked where he'd been, and then even they were gone. The river remembered, and its story was complete.